Hi, everyone. 3-3, Ajax against Olympique Marseille. I have Mark watching from the US. You were supposed to work, but you did watch the game, right?
That I did. I always have to sneak it in, but I make it happen.
All right, perfect. Mark, it's been a while. Good to have you on the channel, of course. You saw the game. You've been very vocal also on X, Twitter, about Maurice Stijn, etc., etc. Let's start with the game today. What were your hopes going into this game, and looking back now, 3-3? What do you feel?
I don't know. It's tough one. I know that a lot of people don't like rooting against the team. A lot of people think that's kind of like fake fandom behavior, but I'll be honest. I kind of went into this game with an open mind. Like if we won and played like prime 2009 Barcelona, all right, fine. Love to see it. But if we came out of here with a loss and it means that Stijn is closer to getting fired, then I'm also pretty happy with that. So to come away with a 3-3 draw, not a great result at home, one that you would expect to win, given that you're Ajax. I think a lot of people will be upset, and I think the pressure remains fully on Stijn, although he might have bought himself a few extra days.
Yeah. Looking at the game itself, right? So let's move away from Stijn and what do you feel about him? We'll come back to that later. Starting 11, also how the match progressed. What did you think? Some players highlighting whether they played good, yes or no. Do you see like something like becoming a bit more clear in the way we're playing, or maybe not? What do you make of this game in general?
Well, starting with the lineup, unsurprised. It seems like Stijn has found a little bit of continuity with sort of like the Dutch players, with your Taylor and Berghuis and Bergwijn and Brobbey, Hato, etc. It seems like that's kind of like the core that he's building around. And then it's the other players that get rotated a little bit more. So not fully surprised. They're still all very good players. I think we actually, are a little bit too harsh on the likes of Taylor and Berghuis from time to time. Like they proved that they could play in an effective team under Ten Hag. Like we saw them be capable players. So not surprised with the lineup there. But in terms of how the game played out, I mean, it's pretty expected, right? I mean, this is how we've been playing ever since Stijn took over. No control, back and forth. Terrible defensively. Like it felt like every single time I looked up to, if I had to jot something down at work and look back up, it looked like Marseille was about to score again. So defensively all over the place, pressing in transition, nowhere to be found. But on the positive side of things, there were some, relatively impressive individual performances going forward. Like I thought Taylor was quite good. I always have said he's better in advanced positions. He's quite good at getting into the box and things like that. So he could have had, honestly, a hat trick on another day. So I thought Taylor showed up pretty well, although, we still know his deficiencies like controlling the game, etc. I thought Brobbey, again, was like a nuisance. He makes things happen. He's physical. Again, finishing probably let him down as per usual. So a couple of bright individual performances. I thought Forbes, again, you see why he can be useful for us. Like you see what hopefully Sven saw, which is just like the insane pace and electric dribbling that he does possess. And I think that he'll be better for us in these types of games that are just back and forth. Like that's where he thrives. So yeah, there was a few positives to take from it. We can drill into some more of the negatives, of which there were many. But yeah, I mean, it was fun. If you're a neutral, it was fun. That's for sure.
Yeah, about Forbes, right? I will touch upon Forbes quickly and about Taylor because I just want to ask you a couple of questions about that. So Forbes, right? We know he's a very good dribbler. Very good pace. But that pass that he gave in the first half to Taylor, that was impressive. I didn't know he had it in him to do something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Forbes is he's very raw, which is to be expected. He had never played a senior minute of professional football before. Like, this is what we expected when you sign a guy like that. And I think even though we recognize he has some deficiencies, like technically in terms of like putting in crosses and maybe shooting and maybe that final pass like you talked about today, but we need to kind of keep playing him to see if he can start doing those types of things and be better against deeper blocks, which is what we have to deal with in the Eredivisie every single week. So that kind of pass, I totally agree with you. That was like, okay, like That is promising. That's good to see. It means that he's like expanding his game a little bit. Maybe he's getting a little bit more confident. And I think that's to be expected with a player who's very young and has not played any senior football before. So I was happy to see that. I was happy to see him take players on. I thought his assist for the third goal was very nice. Like, get to the end line, put a cross in with your weak foot. Those were things that we thought he might not do actually on the right side. There was a lot of talk of like he should only play on the left. So it was nice to see him do that on the right-hand side. So definitely a positive out of him. And I think in the long term, moving forward, once we've hopefully actually put together a like cohesive squad that is capable of competing in Europe, he's going to be super valuable. I mean, I can tell you that the likes of, Man City, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, I'm being ambitious here, but when we're eventually back and, potentially playing at that level, they will not want to see this guy on the counterattack because he is absolutely rapid. So it's useful to have a player like that for these types of games. And I was happy with what he did today.
About Taylor, right? There is a vibe among the fan base, I would say, or maybe even there is much more a tendency towards negativity towards Taylor in recent months, recent weeks. And the thing with him is, for me, he has the qualities. You can see his technique he has a technique. He can dribble. But sometimes, in my view, he's so sloppy in his passing, concentration, defending, all these kind of things. And I do agree with you that I think further up the pitch, he's better. But even though he played a couple of times as a 10, he also didn't impress that much. So he has tendencies to be good at certain elements, for a certain position, in my view. But how do you see it? Because you're much more positive, it seems, about Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Taylor is that he came onto the scene a little bit later. And so towards the end of our, amazing Ten Hag era. So he really came onto the scene, last season in particular, and maybe a little bit the season before that. And I think as a result, we just hold him to a very high standard. We expect him to be a player from that era of football when we were so dominant and so great. But he is what he is. He is a very useful player for our team. He's not a world beater. He's not world class. I don't think he'll ever get there, but he's very competent. He's a great squad player. I love having him in the team. He's an Ajax Academy guy. No problem with him. I think that for the most part, we've been asking him to do things he's not good at. We've been asking him to play as part of a double pivot and receive the ball deep and dictate the game. That's not what he wants to do. He wants to play a box-to-box number 8. He wants to get further forward. He wants to get into the box. He wants to score goals. He wants to create goals. He's more like Klaassen than I think people realize because we've had to shoehorn him into this double pivot role that accentuates all of his flaws, in my opinion, which is calming the game down, which is picking out smart passes, which is playing, at a much lower tempo sometimes to get us back in the game, a la Frankie de Jong, Shona, guys who have that capacity to play in that role. So I think as a result, we've just not been playing so much to his strengths. But I thought a role like today where we had 1 6 and 2 advanced 8s in Bergwijn and Taylor, that's the role for him. That's where he wants to play, getting into the box, not receiving too much in deeper areas. So in a role like that, he can thrive. I agree with you as a 10, as a pure 10, he's not really it either because he's not as the 10. You need to be able to have some comfort receiving with your back to goal. You need to be a little bit more creative. That's not really him. He's more of a late arriver into the box. Yeah. A little bit more like Lampard-y, not comparing Taylor to Lampard, but a little bit more in that vein than a pure number 10. So I think when he's in that role, he can do well. And I thought he was quite good today. He still made some mistakes. He's still not perfect, but of all the players who get criticized, I think Taylor sometimes gets a little bit too much stick, and there's a role for him in this team. And I don't blame, what's been going on because of him,
No, understood. Interesting that you also mentioned about the one pivot. This is clearly a difference if we compare it to Ten Hag, for instance, how we played on the midfield. And you can see one of the new signings that we have, Tahirovic, he's been struggling a little bit on that one pivot role. Do you think that tactic maybe is too much asking of Tahirovic as a player? Because you saw also when Vos came in, he was much more comfortable with that role. Or did you see it differently?
I mean, I agree with you, but at the same time, it's so hard to judge these guys because the system is not there. It's not there. The spacing in midfield is all off. Tahirovic and Voss had to cover so much ground. I mean, Voss did well. I thought he played well. He got a red card. Like, and it's not really his fault. Like, yes, he gave the ball away and he tries to, make a tackle and he gets a second yellow card, whatever. But like, we're just asking them to do a very, very difficult job because the spacing everywhere is just not correct. The fullbacks are both pushing forward. They're so high up the field all the time. Anytime we lose the ball, it's 3 players back. It's the pivot and the 2 center backs, and they just stream forward. How is anybody supposed to deal with that? Like, you could stick Rodri in that midfield. He would look terrible. Like, truly, he would look terrible. Like, that's what I think not enough people are realizing at the moment. I think, yes, you can criticize certain players. I think Tahirovic, he's okay. I don't think, again, world beater. I think he's solid. He can do a role in a functional team. But when everybody is generally looking poor, you got to be thinking about the tactics here. These guys are not all bad players. They didn't learn, they didn't forget how to play football overnight. So that's my thing with the Tahirovic pivot thing. I think it's a tough role, and especially when the tactics are not there. So it's a bit of both. Like, I think Voss is maybe a little bit more comfortable, but at the same time, it's tough. It's hard to blame him. It's
absolutely, absolutely. Actually, before I jumped on the show to talk to you, somebody sent me a text and he said, like, I've never seen Soutalo play this bad before. So it actually tells you, like, it's a result of what you're saying, right? It's because there is no real structure still at Ajax, and everybody's struggling to find the rhythm and to know exactly from each other what to do. So okay, so we've been critical. We're being critical about what's missing, etc., and also saying, like, okay, we cannot blame the players. We touched upon Taylor, we touched upon Tahirovic, Voss, etc. Let's touch upon the highlights of this game. If we can put a couple of positive things compared to the previous games that we saw, because we're heading towards Feyenoord also we're not heading towards them. We're playing against them actually on Sunday. What do you feel like if you have to take positives from this game and reassure the viewers that are watching right now? What would you tell them?
I think going forward, there were some positives. I thought Berghaus had some nice combination play. I thought Taylor, the late arriving runs into the box, he was very dangerous, very dangerous. Again, easily could have had a hat trick. One fantastic save in the first half, nice goal in the second half, and then had that lovely, like, back heel flick to himself and volleyed over the bar at the end. So I thought Taylor in that position seems promising. So I was happy with that. Brobbey, again, menace going forward, very difficult to handle. He obviously still has his moments where his technique just lets him down a little bit. I wish he would, could turn more of those opportunities into goals, or not necessarily goals, but just like better chances. He had the one where he's running clean through at the end and he tries to kind of cut inside of Mbemba, and it was just so easily handled. So I wish he was just a little bit cleaner in those like 1v1 type situations, but again, dangerous. And then Forbes again, lively, super pacey, showed a good proclivity in terms of like going outside and creating danger as well, which is not something we always expect with Forbes, given that we prefer him on the left typically, as well. And then the last point going forward, probably Gay on the at right back, put in a couple of very dangerous crosses. So I think if we can get his dynamic sorted out a little bit more, where he's not always having to push forward, or if he's pushing forward, we actually have competent cover behind him so that it's not leaving us so exposed. Because that's where, a couple of their big chances came from. Some things that can hopefully create us some chances against Feyenoord on the counterattack, because I imagine that's how we're going to be playing that game. So, if we play on the counterattack and we play more compact and we decide that we're no longer Ajax and we're going to sit back a little bit more against Feyenoord, 30% possession and counter on them, I do think we can be successful, especially with Forbes and, again, Brobbey, and then Taylor's late arriving runs.
Okay. All right. Let me go through the comments quickly, just pull up some of the comments that were given. And then at the end, I have another question for you, if that's okay. So I have a comment here from Sven Surf Tsunami. He's saying, maybe conclude that our players are not as bad as it seems. Some hopeful moments, gelling takes time. Sloppy passes, bad defense made it restless though. You want to react on that one?
I mean, it's the same thing as we've been saying. I think I agree. I totally agree. I think it's when every player is playing poorly for the most part, which has been the case for 4 or 5 games so far this season.
Yeah.
It's not because of them. Like, we know that Berghaus did not forget how to play football overnight. He was part of many, many, many fantastic Erik ten Hag performances. He's not a bad player. Same thing
But
with Taylor.
Mark,
Same thing
yeah,
with Bergwijn. We
yeah,
have to put it together.
I totally agree with everything you're saying. One thing that I don't understand, and maybe you can clarify it also for our viewers, is usually you're not that kind of guy that jumps to conclusions very quickly, right? And it's pretty early in the season still, but you're still very critical already of Stein, and the circumstances. You know that the players arrived late. You know that they didn't really have time to train with each other, etc. So even if you take those ingredients in the bag of mix, and mix it up and stuff like that, are you still that critical? Don't you think like, okay, maybe this is still preseason and it will eventually come out and become better?
Nope, I don't think so.
And why is that?
I think that coaching is coaching, and the players that you're putting out there should not impact the type of style that you want to play. If you know the style that you want to play, you should be able to institute it regardless of who's on the field. Everybody should know what their role is. If you want to talk about players not having time to gel, that stuff should all be in the attacking end of the pitch. The little 1-2s, the combinations around the corner. But what's funny is that you actually see more of that. We don't really have a problem combining in and around the box. You see nice little combinations between Berghuis and Bergwijn and Brobbey and Taylor. It happens from time to time. Look at the goal we scored against Ludogorets, the Taylor 1-2 with Brobbey back to Kudus goal. That's the type of stuff that is not coached. That is the type of stuff that these players are just doing intuitively. Those are things that these guys know how to do, and they've been doing previously. The stuff that is coaching is building out from the back. It's pressing as a cohesive unit. And regardless of whatever Stein says, players haven't been here for a while. They don't speak the same language, even though they all speak English. Look at what we were doing in preseason. And whenever we play, this same core of Dutch players that has been there for a while. Davy Klaassen was playing during preseason. Berghuis was playing. Taylor was playing. Bergwijn was playing. Brobbey was playing. Rensch was playing. These are all guys that have been there with Ten Hag. They know what a proper system and what proper tactics look like. He was unable to institute anything from day one. And you could see it. It was very apparent. Unable to coach patterns that the players recognize. And you heard it from some of the players. I believe it was Van den Boomen at one point in one of the games. He was like, there are no patterns of play that we are looking for, which makes it very difficult for us. And I don't care who you are. If you're a good coach and you know what you're doing, you're instituting that right away. We saw it right away with Ten Hag. Roberto De Zerbi does not even speak English and was instituting that from day one at Brighton. It's, at the end of the day, the coaching level in Europe has reached almost like a tipping point. You need elite coaches to compete at the highest level. Look at the likes of like Conte and Mourinho, guys that I think, they're good. They're strong tactically. They've been frozen out of all of the top teams because they are unable to really coach clear patterns of building out from the back to kind of dominate teams and have like cohesive pressing structures. You need the likes of De Zerbi and Pep and, Tuchel and evidently Arteta and these types of guys. Like those are the coaches that you need. Ainge at Tottenham. Look at the way that they institute the tactics so quickly and with so much clarity. The players know exactly what they're trying to do. It doesn't matter who is playing. And I'm sorry, if you're incapable of doing that, which Stein has shown zero to show that he could do that, it's not going to just change magically overnight. So to me, I don't see it. You got to figure it out, go back to square one.
So, all right. Perfect. You made it very clear to everyone where you stand and why you stand like this. Let me move away a little bit from the game. Just slightly go because you're talking about Stein. I have to make a connection to Sven Mislintat as well. Just quickly, your view on the fact that he was the one as a sporting director choosing Stein. One of his first actions was to appoint Stein. And secondly, also your view on the players that were also signed. You're basically saying now to me today that none of those players really impress you to becoming a world-class footballer. Let me put it this way. Is that for all the players that he got, basically? And can you blame Mislintat for what he's done?
It's a tough one because you have to kind of have a little bit of disconnect in your blame here because Sven was in charge. He hired Stein. I think terrible decision. He deserves full blame for that. But at this point, how are we going to rectify that mistake? It's probably not firing Sven, hiring a new Sven, having him fire Stein, hire a new coach. There's just too many layers that would happen there. So I think at this point, you kind of need to separate Sven from this discussion in terms of like who could be fired, etc. But in terms of the blame, yes, Sven. How you hired this guy is beyond me, and it makes me a lot less confident that you will hire somebody better than him. Because if you go from hiring Stein and being impressed enough to hire him, seeing what he did at Sparta, which was barely anything, and deeming him fit for Ajax, yeah, it's not great. I don't have tons of confidence that he can, fix this with a better appointment. In terms of the players, I mean, this was my stance all summer. I hadn't seen many of them play before, so I kind of went in with an open mind. On paper, I think a lot of people thought that they would be impressive. And I would say so far, nobody has really impressed me that much. Usually you're looking for little flashes of ability. I think it was very, very obvious. You watch Lisandro Martinez pass a ball one time and you're like, all right, we've got a player here. Regardless of what's going on, you see the ability. I remember watching literally the first preseason game that Kudus ever played, and you're like, okay, like we've got something here. There is talent, no doubt about it. Anthony, same thing. So far with these signings, I would say that has been missing. I think you see it with Forbes. I think you see what he's going for. Forbes is a type of player, you kind of hope that he turns into like a Leroy Sané type who's just so explosive, can make things happen individually, 1v1, can kill people in transition. I can see it with Forbes. There's been some moments. Some of the other players, though, it's a lot of just solid, it's no wow plays. I think particularly Sutalo has been a little disappointing from that standpoint, just no wow. And I think when you put him next to Hato, the difference is getting close to night and day between the two. Hato looks way more comfortable, way better on the ball, way faster, way stronger. So that's disappointing. And I think it's been the same case for a lot of the guys. Tahirovic, good, not great. Bronco, good, not great. Monsverk, obviously a tough game, only one game so far. We'll see if he's able to kind of put things together. That was a very difficult game for him to play in. But I think that's my stance so far. Akpom, Mikitadze, just haven't seen much. And it doesn't really bode well that none of these attackers and really none of the high profile signings, your Akpoms and your Mikas, etc., have been able to just like insert themselves into the team immediately. You would hope that for that kind of money, they would really be standing out and making a difference right away to the point where like we have to play this guy no matter what. Mm-hmm. And the fact that basically both of them are kind of afterthoughts at this point is not super, not super comforting.
Let's say you put like coming back to your example, that the coach nowadays can have such an effect on players, like the Zerbi, for instance, makes Welbeck, like a reject basically from a lot of clubs. He makes him look very good in that team. Let's say if you hire a really good coach, do you hope that you will see better things from the players that we have right now?
No doubt. I don't think they're bad by any means. I think there's still potential there with a couple of them. I think Tahirovic, I think Bronco has some ability. You've seen it, like his long passing, his shooting, etc. Is tidy. I think Avila has some capabilities. Sosa as well has shown some good flashes. So I don't think they're bad players. I think they're definitely being hindered by the tactics. But when you think world class, when you think these guys could be your next Frankies and Antonies and Lisandro Martinez and guys like that, I don't know about you, but I'm not exactly seeing it. It can take a little bit of time. I get that, but you would prefer to see some flashes. It's like with Hato, right? Even coming into that team with Heitinga, things were a little bit of a mess. It was pretty apparent, we've got a player here. You could just tell when he's on the ball,
Yeah, but should we? I know. This guy he's one of the elite youth players that we have, and you can see it already. Should we benchmark every other player to his standards? Is that realistic? You understand what I mean?
I think a little bit. A little bit. Right. I agree. It's probably a little harsh for some of them, and that's why I think to the point I made earlier about Taylor, not every player needs to be Timber, Hato, Frankie. You know, not every player is going to be that good. It's totally fine if we get a Taylor who stays in our team for 5-6 years, rotating in and out of the team, like being useful at times without getting to that world-class level, like no question. I think what you expect to see when you spend, you know, 20 odd million on guys, which for us is a lot of money, I think you at least hope to see some flashes. You know, you're hoping to see at least something that's like, oof, like I see some burst here, or I see an eye for a pass, or, you know, really good dribbler, things like that. That I think so far I have failed to see with most of the signings, which is not the most comforting thing in the world. But again, I am less harsh on these players at the moment, given all the coaching issues that we've discussed.
Final question on the players. We touched upon the new players. We touched upon young players. You also hear a lot of fans being critical of the veterans. Look, Berghuis hasn't played much because he was suspended. We know that. He's just getting himself, playing time, etc. But people are also looking at our captain, the new captain, Bergwijn. Where do you stand in terms of the veterans and the players, and how much can we expect from them to maybe help this team on the pitch?
Again, I mean, it's so tough with what they've been asked to do, but I agree. I think they need to step up now and maybe take control a little bit. I think I did start to see that with Berghuis a little bit in terms of like his movement, and some of the patterns in the attacking half of the field reminded me of some of the things that we were doing under Ten Hag. I think there was a great moment in the second half when Bergwijn got the ball and he kind of starts running inside, and Berghuis makes like a 20-yard run overlap to get around him, slips him through, puts a cross in, didn't work out, but whatever. And I think you're starting to see them, maybe try and figure things out a little bit on their own. But yeah, I mean, they need to step up their performance as well. But at the same time, it is tough. It is tough. No player is going to succeed in a squad, in a tactical system that is not very cohesive, and when there's a lack of clarity. And I think you see that all over the world. You see that with the types of players that like go up and down in their performance, playing in the right role for them, playing in the right system for them. Performances can flip overnight. One example is like João Felix, right? Everyone has been hating on this guy across the world for how he played at Chelsea, for how he played at Atletico Madrid. He goes into Barcelona, great system they have over there, perfect role for him, playing in that left forward, like left half space. And all of a sudden in his first 2 games, like he looks like one of the best players in the world. So it's like performances can flip so quickly on a individual level that I am hoping that, Berghuis and Bergwijn can figure it out as long as the coaching gets there. But as of right now, it's tough. It's tough, to expect them to do that much. But we'll see. I expect more out of them. I still want to see them work a little bit harder. Bergwijn in particular, sometimes his attitude is a little bit annoying. But we'll see what happens. At the end of the day, the problem with Ajax begins and ends with the coaching. And until that gets sorted out, whether Stein figures it out himself by some miracle of God, or he gets fired and we bring somebody else in who knows what he's doing, I don't expect many things to change.
All right. All right. Thank you so much for making time. I know you're working and stuff. Guys, thank you for tuning in. 3-3. We have 1 point at least. Let's hope this is the start of something better. And let's see what happens in the coming weeks with Sven, but also maybe with Stein. So it remains very, I don't know, it remains like tumultuous, as they say. And other than that, I wish everybody the best, and we'll see each other on Sunday against Feyenoord. Mark, thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.